Hello, hello, hello!
Welcome to Pop Culture Therapy. Again, I'm Advent Nebula.
And I am Cruellica Kain. Did you miss us?
Of course you did. So, not a lot's been transitioned off since our last episode going on. But you are getting ready for Kumoricon.
I know! This is going to be my first time going to Portland. Even though I always lived on the northeast, I've actually never been further north than either like Utah or California on the western side of the country. So it's actually going to be kind of cool to go to a city that when I check the weather report, even though it's not that far out yet, it's raining every day.
Yeah.
And I miss it.
Yeah, I've been to Portland a few times. I've been to Seattle a few times. I like the cities, but I don't think I could ever handle the cold, rainy winters that both cities are notorious for.
Being that I lived in a city that had 3 large bodies of water, so we constantly had what's called lake effect snow. And if you don't know what it is, look it up because it's actually it made Buffalo, New York colder than Alaska numerous times. And it was actually colder than hell because there is a place called Hell. Can't remember what city, but it's in the northern...
It's in the northern peninsula of Michigan, and it's right between Lake Huron and Lake Superior.
And it's supposedly extremely cold there, but we were colder than hell. So there is something to be said when Buffalo, New York can be colder than hell.
Yeah, Hell, Michigan.
But with that said, Kumoricon, I'm looking forward to it because not only is it our first time going to Portland, it's our first time going to this convention. We're going to be hosting 3 panels. Kaiju is doing his Sugimura panel, which he loves doing that, especially in a new convention, to kind of get people who may not know about tokusatsu interested in it.
You're doing one of our favorite panels.
I am doing our villains panel. Nothing is really going to change for anybody who may watch it online compared to previous iterations, except for what may spew out of my mouth, because unfortunately, outside of the clips and the progression being somewhat scripted, I am not scripted. So I tried to get it to be an 18 plus panel because I know me, but it seems like it's going to be all ages for the most part, so I'll have to minimize my F-bombs to a small majority. And then Kaiju and I will be doing our 3rd panel on the different incarnations of Sailor Moon again. This will be our 2nd time doing it, I think. 2nd or 3rd?
This will be the 2nd because the first time we did this one was at Colorado Anime Fest earlier this year.
Yes. And no, we did it at Detour as well.
Okay, so this will be the 3rd.
So it'll be the 3rd time. Detour, it was during the cosplay contest, so sadly not as many people were able to attend. But between those 3 panels, I am looking forward to seeing all the different attendees out there, seeing what the culture is like for an anime convention in Portland, because it's always interesting to see what the local culture is by how their anime fans are.
And also, speaking of Sailor Moon this week, the final volume of Stars is out.
I know! Stars was one of those series that I bought the illegal rips of the series, and I say illegal because it wasn't licensed anywhere, on really bad quality DVDs.
I know. I had them before I gave them away after you gave them away to me.
They were like, God, 15 years ago. But that's not even bad.
Yeah.
Silver Quill.
Oh, yeah.
Bought the VHS tapes. Because I've seen his VHS tape collection of Sailor Stars, and that was around the same time that we got our DVDs, because it was...
And those are the fan-subbed VH rips. So they were straight from TV and then fan-subbed.
And so Sailor Stars was one of those series that I've never seen... I've only seen... before now, I've only seen OG, R, and then Stars. So I never watched S or Super S. So first thing that really frustrated me about Stars is the first 10 episodes, I think it is, had nothing to do with the Starlights.
It was wrapping up the character arc.
It was wrapping up Super S. So I know exactly how Super S has always ended. And then watching Stars. Stars was, to me, my favorite season because I really like the Starlights.
Not only that, you got one of the best episodes in the entire series with the battle in Usagi's apartment.
Oh, in the kitchen when everybody's transforming and you hear all the dishes breaking in the background. And my favorite random character, Chibi Chibi. Oh, I thought that character was adorable. I hated Chibiusa, but Chibi Chibi was cute.
And then you got my favorite villain in Galaxia.
Oh, I liked Iron Mouse with the phone from hell. But Sailor Stars, for all of you younger anime fans, you are lucky. Let me just put that out there. You are beyond lucky because... Not saying there's a difference between true fans and not true fans. It's all about your effort and what you're willing to go through.
And also, you're the lucky fans that didn't have to grow up with Uranus and Neptune being cousins.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, that was super confusing. Well, I always knew they weren't cousins, but it was super confusing to watch it and be like, that doesn't work. But we... as fans back in the 90s and 2000s had to fight and buy really bad, really not illegal because they weren't licensed here, but still technically illegal because they weren't their property, to watch a series on such crap quality. Because anime fans back in the 90s and early 2000s were dedicated.
Now... the only series we're stuck doing with is all the incarnations of Macross that Harmony Gold has prevented from coming over.
I know the bastards. But outside of that, I'm really super excited that Sailor Moon, especially because Viz is in this chaos right now with potentially losing the license.
Yeah, Naoko is having problems with Viz apparently, and I think it's because of their complete absorption by Warner Brothers now.
Yeah, I'm not entirely... It's very weird how the arguments have been posed.
And it's not just her. Her husband with Hunter x Hunter has been having problems with Viz and Warner Brothers as well. So nobody knows what's going to happen when Hunter x Hunter's license expires by Viz either.
Exactly. So technically, right now as it stands, Viz cannot release anything else, such as the other Crystal stuff.
Yeah, so when the two movies for Super S get adapted, who knows who's going to grab the license up from Toei for those.
It would be smart if Rightstuf did it, because they can at least get the same dubbing group.
Because it's Bang Zoom, they can easily use it.
Exactly. Outside of if it was like Funimation or Sentai, because they typically, while they can use, or while they'll sometimes use California actors or VAs for it, they usually stick with Texas. The
only California actors they tend to use on the regular ones that have studios inside their own homes.
Exactly, like Patrick and stuff like that. But, Patrick Seitz, sorry.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what's been going on with the anime world recently. We're getting, now that we're in November, we're getting to the holiday season, which, love it or hate it, it is here.
It's also wallet-killing time for a lot of gamers.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's a hard time for gamers because, while I am more of a passive gamer. I play tons of video games. I have a huge personal video game collection. But compared to Advent, compared to...
our friend Kevin, who's got an entire closet library of games, plus an entire digital library that I think most people would squawk at and go, wait, what?
Like, we have, between myself and Kaiju, we have over 100 video games. And...
between my digital and physical library, I have about 160. And then our friend Kevin's got about 700. And this is just his physical. I don't even want to try and guess his digital collection.
In my digital collection, I probably have about 10. I'm not a huge digital fan.
But sometimes it's your only way.
Exactly. Sometimes you have no other choice. But the reason why I say it's a hard time right now is because we actually had this back in, what was it?
2013, before the new consoles dropped in 14.
So this has been probably the second longest No, actually, no. This is about standard for generation
This has
length.
actually been one of the shortest generations, though, as well.
Yes, because the previous generation
Was 11 years.
Was 11 years, which was the longest video game generation to date. And we're going on more of the modern generations, not classic. We're going from PS1 on forward.
You actually could go back to Generation 4, which was the Genesis and the Super Nintendo before the PlayStation 1 dropped.
I think most people look at the Gen 5 on current.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's Gen 5 when PlayStation came out.
That was Generation 5.
So Gen 5 is when PlayStation came out. And the reason why a lot of people look at that and focus more heavily on that is because that's when games started to take a different turn. Yes, Sega, Dreamcast, Nintendo, Atari, all of those did great, and there was a lot of motivation. It felt like the moment PlayStation jumped into the market,
it killed off Sega and it killed off Atari.
It did. It really took in a change in how the competitive scope was going to look for video games.
And then Generation 6, Microsoft steps in with the Xbox.
And that, I think, was the most impressive because while I was never a huge Xbox fan myself, just mainly because a lot of their games or IPs I wasn't a huge fan of, but having an American company walk into that landscape that has been predominantly...
Especially after Atari died, you didn't really have an American presence again.
You didn't have an American presence really until Xbox decided to walk into the landscape. I think it was around, 2001?
It's about a year after the PlayStation 2 launched.
Yeah, and when they came in, their quality was spot on. Like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the games, but Xbox quality was phenomenal.
And I'll admit, the original Xbox had great quality, and they knocked it out of the park with a lot of their titles that came out. And I'm not just counting Halo, but I'm counting some of their other games too. They got Jade Empire on there, which knocked it out of the park and put BioWare on the map, especially when Knights of the Old Republic came out for Star Wars.
And Gears was really popular.
Yeah, Gears, when the Xbox 360 launched, became their new flagship after Halo.
And admittedly, for Generation 6, that was the one where I was always a gamer, but I was even more casual than I was now because I was too cool for that. I watched movies instead of played video games. Not that that's a bad thing, but now I'm a gamer. But
and then Generation 7, Sony pretty much flopped with the PlayStation 3.
They flopped, but at the same time, their library. This is what really amazes me. PlayStation 3 technically flopped, but I have a ton of games for the PS3.
Yeah.
And I have a ton of great games for the PS3.
And then Sony ended up knocking it out of the park with the current generation, Gen 8 with the PlayStation 4, with only the Wii now being the best-selling console. Then it's the PlayStation 4 and then the PlayStation 2. So Sony has two of its three consoles in the top three best-selling consoles of all time.
I do have to laugh, though, that for Generation 8, Nintendo has released two consoles.
Yeah, the Wii U and the Switch. And the Switch is now has sold more units than the Xbox One, and it came out 2 years later.
The reason why I value Nintendo, even though I like the mature titles that Sony has, and I kind of wish Sony really put more effort into their handheld market, because they have some kick-ass handheld games.
They pretty much said they're not going to focus on any handheld stuff now.
Which I can appreciate, but the one thing that I have to say Nintendo has always been killer on is they know how to use that handheld market, and now introducing the Switch.
And the Switch Lite being their permanent handheld version now that just released.
And having that where you can play it anywhere. Your Switch console is your handheld device.
And then for the people who didn't want a console version, now have the Switch Lite for just a mobile portal version, so they don't have to worry about having to hook it up to their TV or anything.
But the nice thing is, even with the regular Switch,
it's portable as well.
It's portable. And that's the one thing I really do believe is going to help make or break the next generation. Because everyone has a cell phone. Everyone has a tablet of some sort, even if it is just their cell phone, because cell phones are getting bigger again, which always makes me laugh because we wanted smaller and smaller and smaller, and now we want gigantic flipping phones.
Well, and it's also going to be interesting because Sony's already seems to be thinking ahead with their app now being able to integrate and be used as a spare controller for your PlayStation 4, which
I think that's going to be super faulty.
I already have tried it out. It's good on some games, other it's not, but you can tell they're going to integrate this in with the PlayStation 5 in the future.
The problem is, old cell phones, up until about 5 years ago, used to have, and same thing with tablets, used to have that retinal, I know I'm using the wrong term, but there's an actual, device in the technology that you can use it as a controller or as a remote. But they removed it, which... that's usually outside of Bluetooth. That's what helps sync things up. And with Bluetooth, the problem is you have to have a stable internet connection. Because if the internet's not running Wi-Fi wise, Bluetooth will not work. Unless they have found a way to do it without the internet.
If you have 4 or 5G, it's going to work with the new integration with 5G is where it's going to be the key, and it's looking like...
But that's a data hog.
Yeah.
And even though... cell phone companies are getting a little bit cheaper with their data, it's still astronomical.
Yeah.
So that's the only fear I have for that. But not kind of going backwards. It is a huge season for video games because
at the same time, a lot of the big releases that were expected to come out have gotten pushed into the spring of next year.
I wonder why.
The new console generation, so they can spread out, because there's going to be kind of seeing a lack of game releases until the new generation launches.
Well, and there's a lot of games that it seems like there's a little bit of ports going around as well.
Not just ports.
Or having Game of the Year editions or definitive editions.
And a lot of the indie title developers are pushing a lot more of their stuff out this year. It's been a very weird holiday season for video games this year.
Like, a couple of the things, like, I know one game that's coming out, I have been trying to stay away from reviews, is Death Stranding, only because the trailers have confused me so much. I don't know if I want a review to help confuse me even further.
But now, over 100 reviews are out, and it's not the Kojima give all that a lot of people are expecting on it. It's getting some mediocre scores.
And now you have Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Which has pissed off a lot of the fan base. I am kind of iffy on it. When it was first announced, I was like, okay, I'll get a Switch this year, but as more and more information is coming out of the game, like, I'm going to hold off on a Switch till probably after No More Heroes is out.
So I think what I'm seeing from a lot of the newer video games that are coming out is they're continuations of other properties, like Destiny 2, getting more DLC, getting more stuff for Tokyo Warfare, for Mario, another game there. There's a lot of different series that are just getting continuations, but you usually see this pretty heavily once there is a new generation coming into the world. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not a huge fan of Wolfenstein. There is no reason I'm going to look at that as my end of year title that I must have.
Yeah, and that one came out to a resounding flop. Call of Duty's Modern Warfare reboot came out, and it's been kind of... nobody's really talking about it. And it came out over a month ago.
Well, and that's exactly it. Because the games...
Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is like the final big game release this year. And EA and Star Wars, and almost everybody that's like, okay, you're going to have to prove it to me, EA, that you can actually make a competent Star Wars game.
That's because fans have been slapped in the face so many times with Star Wars games because they've been so kitsch.
Yeah, there hasn't been a really good Star Wars game since Knights of the Old Republic 2. And even then, that kind of ended on a whimper.
And the challenge when you're bringing out new games in the fourth quarter of a year is not only are you having the fear of a new generation coming out and those ports going to the new generation, which happens quite often.
Which we'll definitely see that with the Final Fantasy VII remake getting a PlayStation 5 port because it's coming out at the very end of the financial quarter of quarter 4.
And the other challenge is when the holiday season comes up, as it is right now, a lot of the stores will do sales for video games.
Yeah, Target will more than likely, before Black Friday, have its buy two, get one free sale.
Same thing with Best Buy. Same thing with, not really Amazon.
Amazon will end up on having their Black Friday sale where they're slashing prices down to really cheap for stuff they're just trying to get out of the warehouse.
Well, and that's the thing, is they're not doing it for new titles. They're going to do it for other titles that people have not bought. I know for a fact, Kaiju has already said he's waiting for the sales to buy a ton of video games.
Yeah. Which, especially with him having that brand new Switch, that it's when he's probably going to hit the Target sale up for the games.
There's not too many Switch titles being on the Target sale, so we'll have to wait for Best Buy.
Or even you'll have to wait for the Amazon sale.
And that's kind of the challenge when you come into the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter, which we're in right now,
which starts from November, goes until the first week of March this year.
No, first quarter is...
Nah, our financial quarters goes...
oh, okay.
Yeah,
no, I'm talking about standard.
Yeah, standard quarter, yeah.
So standard quarters, first quarter is January through March, second quarter is April through June, July through September is third quarter, and October through December is fourth quarter. Yeah. So I'm not looking at private fiscal. I'm looking at standard... Yeah. Human being, because corporate,
when you work in the corporate environment, the first week of March of 2020 is the end of the 2019 financial quarters.
If only. That's no.
That's for the retail.
That's for retail. For where I work, the fiscal year ended last month.
Because you work in aerospace.
Yes, so aerospace, it usually ends around September, October. But for the regular world, for us schmoes who do our regular taxes through January through December, we're in the fourth quarter. And fourth quarter is when we really get hit hard because we have the holiday season. And not only do we have the holiday season, we have all those sales and we have all these new video games that come out. We also have the other thing that's a nightmare when it comes to the holiday season. You want to know what that is?
I work in the industry.
Oh, I'm not thinking of just the shopping aspect. That's one of the two. First, you have Black Friday, which this year it's on my birthday. Again.
Which will be the deadest day of the year for where I work.
Black Friday is the worst year. I actually... always thought it was like the coolest thing when I was a kid, because back in the 80s for Black Friday, they actually would give you free things. Yes, they have the doorbusters and things like that, but they would actually give you like free ornaments or free gift boxes or free products, not just super ridiculous discounts. They would actually give you free things. So there were many times I got like the coolest gifts just waiting in Black Friday lines. And so you have that. The second thing you have is you have this ridiculous push of last minute movies that come out.
And it's all the Oscar bait that we have.
You have all the Oscar bait and you have all the big movies that people want to see rather than hanging out with their families.
Like Star Wars coming out on the 20th of December.
Or Knives Out coming out Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah. The Knives Out is coming out the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Yes, but right around Thanksgiving. Yeah. But there are so many movies coming out. So it's always hard when you already have a season where you're spending so much money and then you have to add into it. Do I want to go to the movies? Do I not want to go to the movies? Do I want to go to Black Friday and spend all my money then for Christmas presents? Especially when people give you presents lists that don't get sold on Black Friday because they don't exist in proper channels.
We know which friend we're talking about.
Oh, yes. But no, it's a great time of year. The hardest time of the year for me right now is television. Because that, for the moment, is all the Christmas commercials coming out because we forget Thanksgiving exists. And then we have, outside of that, we just have the craziness with like all these ridiculous sales.
Yeah, it's sales galore gonna just start
And
popping
that's
up.
just going to make it crazy. But another thing I wish they had out here that we have, at least in the Northeast close to Canada, is we have Boxing Day. We don't have that out here, and I wish we did, because it's like a second Christmas. But you don't get it. Why do not true Americans get this? Why is it only the Canadians?
The British do Boxing Day also.
Oh, yes, British do. So Boxing Day is, if you've ever heard of the term regifting, you either give away Christmas presents that you don't like to other people, or you actually go and return them to the stores and get gifts you want. It's so silly, but it's kind of like I said, a second Christmas, because if you ever get things that you truly don't want, Boxing Day allows you to kind of go trade that in.
And back to movies.
Oh, no, I don't want to talk about this movie.
Yeah. Coming out right on the same day as Star Wars. They did it. They really freaking did this, and I still can't believe it. They're doing a Cats movie.
I still don't get the idea of doing Cats. I never even got the play, and I like opera, and I don't like Cats.
Yeah, and then another Oscar, probably the biggest Oscar bait movie that's coming out is 1917, which is about the trench warfare between the British and Germans on Christmas Day, where they actually stopped fighting to celebrate Christmas with the soldiers together. Which it sounds like this is going to be the biggest Oscar bait movie this year, because we know how the Oscars love war movies, and doing a movie about the Christmas truce of 1917.
Yeah. The only movie I'm really looking forward to right now is Doctor Sleep, because I'm a huge Stephen King fan.
Which there's a little, people are still wondering, well, how's this a sequel to The Shining when a certain character that died in The Shining is actually a prominent character, Doctor Sleep, and then you have to remind people they're adapting the book instead of making a true sequel to The Shining movie.
Actually, no. They're making a sequel to The Shining movie, so I haven't seen it, obviously,
Yeah.
but from what I've read, is the way the Shining book, or the way the Shining movie is by Kubrick, whatever events happen there will still stay true here.
Still straight. Okay, so it's a kind of a sequel to, in a way, to both.
Yes, so they're using the Kubrick only because while Stephen King did do a miniseries of The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's version of it is what everyone knows, what everyone remembers. So the only way you can make this work without confusing the hell out of people is to make it a sequel based off of that.
And even with a certain character appearing in this movie, which is still going to confuse some people.
Well,
But there's ways they can do it.
there's ways they can do it without making it a problem, because I read a good portion of Doctor Sleep, and I understand how they'll make it work. So it's just going to be interesting to see how this plays together. Outside of that, I really don't care about Star Wars. I know that's a terrible thing to say.
I'm on the, I'll see the movie just for the sake of seeing how they wrap this up.
I'll see the movie because I'm married to somebody who's going to force me to do so. I am looking forward to Knives Out just because I've seen the trailer so much. I just want to see the movie and just be done with it.
And I liked Looper, so I'm really interested to see how he takes a comedy take on a story that's basically a Clue, but done in a more stylized fashion and very different at the same time.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I'm looking forward to it as.
Where you and Kaiju really didn't enjoy Looper, I thought it was very original.
I enjoyed it. I just don't think Gordon Levitt looks anything like Bruce Willis.
They made it work, though.
They made it work, but they don't look. I've seen a young Bruce Willis. Young Bruce Willis doesn't look anything like Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Are we talking about a certain comedy that almost killed Bruce Willis's career?
There is much that nearly killed Bruce Willis's career.
In fact, you almost did the 6 Die Hard before Disney bought Fox.
Oh, God, thank you. Thank you, Disney. Actually, that's a good segue into another topic that is really prevalent right now.
Because Disney Plus is going to be launching in a few weeks.
Well, actually, no. Disney Plus, by the time this podcast comes out, should already have launched because it comes out on November 12th. So, yes, this is... when you see this podcast, Disney Plus should already be available. The challenge with Disney Plus, and I think this is what, even from talking with a lot of people I know, there's some hesitancy on it because while there's a list of what's going to be available if you search for it, unfortunately it's not readily available and you don't know if it's accurate or complete.
And they're not going to do a binge model. They're going to be releasing content week to week with the shows. Even the shows that have been available for a while, they're just going to release...
certain series. Like Simpsons, all 30 years is going to be on there. For a lot of National Geographic, all of those will be on there. For other series, depending on what it is, they are going to do that other model of week to week versus binge, depending on what it is. But Netflix is doing that right now as well.
Yeah, Netflix is doing that. And... it's working for some of the content Netflix has been putting out, and other content with Netflix, it's like, stop doing that. Just give it a binge.
It depends on what it is. I don't mind week to week if it's consistent, and that's my problem.
And then Amazon, with its original properties that it does a combination of either week to week or binge. It really depends on what title it is, which I don't mind that.
The concern I have for Disney Plus, though, is outside of The Simpsons and a lot of the National Geographic, everything that has been listed for the launch has been pretty much the Disney catalog, the Disney core catalog, not the Fox additions to it.
The biggest thing they're pushing on launch day is The Mandalorian, their Star Wars original TV series.
And, no, they're also pushing The Simpsons. Oh, my God. That's like the first thing you see if you go onto their website is The Simpsons.
And then The Mandalorian, like, they're hoping in case Star Wars Rise of Skywalker flops, well, people have the Star Wars television series content that's probably going to go on forever.
Well, and my problem, or my hesitation is, Disney has a wide range of content. But they're only looking at Disney Core. So they're not looking at Buena Vista. They're not looking at, I think it's Miramax they had. They're not looking at any of their side companies. Because Miramax for Disney was their horror.
And a lot of the Miramax stuff now has, Disney just didn't renew a lot of licenses stuff, and a lot of that stuff is scattered around to other companies now. Shout even has the rights to a couple of old Miramax stuff. Tarantino grabbed all the stuff that was released under Miramax, so he owns those rights now.
And that's my biggest problem my biggest hesitation all at the same time, is right now, Disney is the keeper of a lot of content. Because they have 2 massive entities. And all of those little dribblings. Because 20th Century Fox, you have Searchlight, you have all of the different little itty-bitty ones that Fox had, plus all of Disney's. And if Disney is just going to focus on Disney products for Disney Plus, it's not worth it to me.
And then,
because I can own half of what they're probably going to show.
And then a lot of the Fox content's going to get shoved on the Hulu.
And that's the problem there as well, is why am I going to pay for original content of The Mandalorian, Loki, the Marvel stuff? Because even if they don't release it, if we think of the Netflix Marvel shows, and I imagine it's going to be fairly similar to those for at least the first season, because even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Those, they made the comment loosely related to the core series. If it's not required viewing...
They've said so far the required viewing is going to be WandaVision for Doctor Strange 2. They have said that.
And even then, I highly doubt they're going to alienate their movie-going audience so far by saying, if you haven't seen WandaVision, you're not going to get the movie. That would be a huge gamble. That would, no matter how good Disney thinks they are, that would fail in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because...
But I can see them getting that cocky now.
If they get that cocky, it'll fail and they'll learn their lesson very quickly. But if they have all this content with Fox, putting it on the Hulu, all they're doing is biting themselves in the ass. Because if I had to choose between, even though I'm probably not ever going to do Hulu either, but if I had to choose between the two, Hulu versus Disney Plus, guess where I'm going?
Hulu.
Absolutely. That's going to have the content I want. And truthfully, I think of that as almost double dipping for them at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that's from a lot of people I've talked to, that's the reason why they have not signed up for Disney Plus, is because the risk-reward ratio is just not there.
Which is the same thing we got to comment on, which is going to be launching in February with Warner Brothers, with HBO Max.
HBO Max, depending on what they have, I'd be more willing to spend my money on that than right now Disney Plus.
You know, HBO Max, I got to give it credit, because if HBO Max looks like it's going to be worth it, because I have a subscription already to Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll's going to be filtered into HBO Max, and of course you're going to be able to get their DC streaming. The HBO Go is going to be included with that if you want to do the full HBO Max, and then the other stuff if you don't want to have the individual properties.
See, that's the reason. Now, if HBO Max does follow through with that, because there's always that chance, kind of look at what Disney's doing with Hulu versus that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they are truly doing that or what they're doing with Hulu, so I'm kind of just looking at it as two separate entities. But with HBO Max, if they funnel Crunchyroll into that, if they funnel, I'm going to use Neon Alley, because that's technically what the Viz
It doesn't
streaming.
exist. Neon Alley
doesn't exist anymore, but that's what the core umbrella was for all of Viz only titles. Not Crunchyroll, but Viz only.
And now Cartoon Network and Crunchyroll are under the same stuff. It's going to be weird with the Cartoon Network stuff. It's going to start popping on the Crunchyroll here next year.
But if...
And then Rooster Teeth is also a part of HBO Max, which they've already shown.
But if you have Rooster Teeth, if you have all of Viz's content, if you have all of Crunchyroll's... The only thing I don't think Crunchyroll would put onto HBO Max is titles that they only own the streaming of Japanese. It would have to be like Yuri on Ice or Nanbaka or things like that.
Rise of the Shield Hero, Konosuba.
Exactly. Things that they own the dub for.
Not just the dub, but
license.
the entire physical release media.
Exactly.
As well.
If they own the release media, they own the dub that they can put onto that.
Yeah.
That's the only way I think it could work for the anime community. Now, for the wide community, if you have all the Warner titles, if you have all of the HBO content,
the new Animaniacs series that they're doing is going to go straight to HBO Max.
if you have also, because is Cinemax owned by Warner?
HBO and Cinemax are owned by Warner Brothers now.
Okay, if you have all the Cinemax content, because Cinemax gets a lot of good. I know people used to call it Skinemax back in the 90s, but I don't think it does the same thing as
It
before.
has some of those shows still going on, but they focus more on their movie licenses that they have
That's
with
what
HBO
I thought.
now.
The only challenge I could see playing into a factor is if they don't follow through on incorporating all of that content. If they don't, then it will blow up in their face. But even with that, I'm not going to adopt it right away.
Yeah.
I want to see how it succeeds.
Yeah, especially considering they're doing like what Verve has with their 3 pricing models. They're doing the same thing with HBO Max.
Well, and the problem is, going back to Disney real quick, is all the shows that they have coming out, like for the Marvel stuff, outside of The Mandalorian, everything is next year and the year after.
Yeah.
So why rush to get something?
Yeah, The Mandalorian's debuting, and then their other Star Wars series doesn't come out until 2020. And that's going to be the Clone Wars finale season, which fans have been asking for years and years.
Well, exactly. And the nice thing about HBO is they have a lot of great original content.
Yeah, and that's like HBO Max. It'll be worth it if you just want to have the HBO side with all their original shows, especially with premiering this week, His Dark Materials, the adaptation of those novels, actually for a television series now.
Oh, yeah. No, they have a lot of great stuff. I love Veep. That's always been one of my favorite shows.
And with His Dark Materials, I'm like, okay, you have James McAvoy playing the role Daniel Craig had in the original Golden Compass, but this time they're adapting all three of the books. So you know you're going to get the complete book adaptation and the completeness of all three books over a 4-season commitment this time.
Absolutely.
And unlike with Game of Thrones, where you don't know where it's going to end, if you've read the books, you know how this is going to end, and you know they're going to do it faithfully, especially with the BBC and HBO teaming up to do this.
Well, exactly. And I think right now that's going to be the benefit of having a subscription service like HBO, because HBO is something everyone covets when they can get to it.
Yeah, and Go's kind of limited, where now having HBO Max, a lot of this HBO content won't be limited to people that have an Amazon account and get the HBO with it, or people who have an HBO along with their cable package and then have Go on the side, or pay out the wazoo for Go and still don't get the full access. This will get the full access now.
Oh, yeah. No, the one thing I have to say is if you do have an HBO subscription through your cable network, they give you HBO Go for free. Because that's how I use HBO Go. I don't have HBO, but my mom does, so I steal hers.
Yeah, where if you want, like me, to watch HBO stuff, I have to do it through my Amazon account, through my Amazon Prime, which tacks on an extra $5 to my subscription a month.
Which is not worth it, depending on what you really want to watch.
And there's a lot of HBO content that I watch, so... Because I love Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a great show. It's always been a good show. But it seems like going forward, cable television is really working hard to stay relevant. And actually, they're doing a good job at it.
Except on the sports side, which we're starting to see.
Well, the sports side is...
Cord cutters are cutting into their advertising revenue, and you're starting to see the fights that... Because here in Colorado right now, if you're a Nuggets or Avalanche fan, you have to go to bars or hope that the games get showed on local television, because the sports network is not on any of the cable networks right now, or the satellite providers.
Oh, it went to one of them, I heard. Dish, I think?
Dish has worked it out, but it's going to be a couple weeks before it's finalized.
But I think within the pop culture realm, the reason why sports is popular but not as popular television-wise is because there's so many ways to view it now. Because every app, there's like 20 apps that you can get sports stats, or you can watch clips from the game, or
if you have Verizon, the NFL license is tied into your Verizon contract.
I know, I actually had to fight them to get that removed from my account. I was like, I am not paying for something I will never watch. They did not like me after I argued that point. I was like, I'm not paying for the NFL. Well, it's part of your life. Nope. Don't watch it. But streaming is becoming such a competitive force that cable television has to really fight to keep up. And they are smartly doing it because, yes, you have cable television, which I actually still have cable TV at home.
I do not, and Sony just killed View, so there goes my actual...
I know, PlayStation View is gone, so you have to have something.
Yeah.
But Hulu does have live television. You can watch live television, I just found out. But I have it because with your TV subscription, you can watch your cable TV at home off your box, or you can use the app specifically for Xfinity, which I know is a very big one on the western side of the country, and I think certain sides...
Well, considering NBC, Comcast own Xfinity?
Yes, which it's becoming almost nationwide, but it can't because of monopolization.
They just killed all the competition except for the satellite networks out here.
Yes. But you can now stream your cable television anywhere and everywhere. And they are also to compete with Disney or Warner Brothers or anyone else. They actually are putting a lot of free content. So if you just have a basic plan, there's still a lot of free content of movies, of television shows that you can actually watch, and you don't have to be at home anymore, because the world knows everyone's more mobile culture. So now your actual streaming can be just as mobile as before.
Which is helpful to talk about with us going to the holiday season, and everybody's going to be standing in those long-ass lines on Black Friday.
Exactly. So make sure you have a good charge in your battery for your cell phones or your tablets. Wear headphones if you're going to be standing in line, because one thing that I've been nearly tempted to do many times is somebody has a loud-ass speaker on their phone. I just want to kind of punch them or throw down their phone and break it. Because I find it rude to be blaring out whatever you're watching on your phone.
Those are about as annoying as the people that will talk in the Bluetooth headset while you're being a good customer service rep, but you're just like, okay, this is one time where I wish the customer is always right didn't apply.
Oh, I actually... So, off topic, before we really close this out, because holiday season is crazy, I purposely will say loudly if I'm on the phone and there's somebody around me that's going to be on the phone getting the checkout, like, I'm sorry, I must let you go, because I find it ruder than hell to be on the phone when somebody is checking me out of the store. And usually it's somebody I know, so they believe the same thing as I get so many guilty or F you looks when I do that, and the employers are like, thank you. I'm like, yeah, no, it's rude. But with that said, for the holiday season, I have a couple of plans. I know Advent has a couple of plans of like what we want to talk about. We don't really want to announce them until we kind of make them fruition. I think one of the topics that we're looking at, though, is going to be talking a little bit of a hard topic.
Yeah, especially for this topic, because I have a grandmother who is dying, and it's right around the holiday season. And then I've had another recent event in my life that just sucks.
So during the holiday season, many negative things happen. Unfortunately, sadly, people pass away. Family members, human or animal, pass away any time of year. But it's always hardest during the holidays, from Halloween up until New Year's, because that's the time where everyone gets together, is thankful, is togetherness, is not just thinking about capitalism. So one of the things we want to talk about is kind of like, not specifically mental illness, but how to use pop culture to stay positive during times like now, where it's very challenging because you think about everyone you've lost around the holidays. I know for me, the hardest thing was my grandmother went into the hospital the day after my birthday, which was 2 days after Thanksgiving, and she never came out of the hospital, and I had to pull the plug. So holidays have always been a little challenging for me because I spent my Christmas day in the hospital with my grandmother as she was dying. And not to go dark, but that's something you need to find uplifting things to keep you positive when you're going through dark times. And I think the holiday season is a really good time to address that.
Yeah, especially knowing that this may be the last holiday I have with my grandmother this year.
And that's a hard thing to deal with. Another thing I would like to personally try doing is we did horror movies for Halloween, because obviously Halloween is where everybody thinks of horror. I have a new tradition I would like to do, and that is to actually do a podcast on all the holiday themed horror films, going with Santa Sleighs, or going with Black Christmas, or any of those holiday Krampus, or the Christmas Horror Story. Over the next few weeks, we're going to compile our lists.
And it's not just necessarily Christmas that we'll look at too. There are other holidays throughout the year that there are horror themes too that we'll actually look at as well with this.
Yes, and if you get a chance to, and if you are an Xfinity subscriber, they have Jack Frost, not the crappy one with Michael Keaton, I believe.
We're talking about the serial killer one.
The horror movie one. They have Jack Frost on Xfinity for free to watch. I recommend checking out if you've never seen it, because it's a great horror movie.
And with that, We'll see you on our next podcast. Probably won't be going up until right around Thanksgiving for our next episode.
Yep, it will be closer to Thanksgiving, which is never a bad thing. And until then, bye!